Hey folks, I'm Troy and you're watching TroyTube. In this video we're going to talk about some printer and paper settings and some different things with your printers, printer drivers, and all that fun stuff that a lot of people find confusing. So stick around, we'll be right back to talk about that. Alright, of course we are talking about printer settings, and we're going to be talking about this from a Windows perspective, but the same principles apply to a Mac. So if you can kind of translate that over to your Mac settings, it's probably going to be pretty close to the same things. So we're going to talk about printer drivers and the difference between downloading the drivers from the manufacturer or just letting Windows set that up for you. We're going to talk about some presets. We're going to talk about paper types and what can cause banding and some other issues. And we're also going to talk about choosing the right paper type when you're loading your paper and when you're printing. So let me switch over to the computer and we'll talk about these things, and it's probably easiest for me to just show it to you. All right, we'll start out by taking a look at the printer drivers first, because that's the essential part. The rest of the video doesn't mean a whole lot without the correct printer drivers. So you're going to want to go into Control Panel. There's a couple different ways you can get to this. Again, these are settings for Windows. This is not for Mac, but if you pay attention, you can probably translate some of this over to Mac without too much trouble, because all the principles still remain the same. I have a shortcut for Control Panel down here on my shortcut bar, but if you do not, you can click the search and type in the word control, and it should come right to the top. And usually when you go into Control Panel for the first time, you'll see that it has categories for your icons, and you can change that to small icons. I like to see all of my icons at one time here so that I know where I'm going. And we're going to go into devices and printers, and then down to printers and scanners. And when you go into that, you should see a list of all the different printer models you have. And in this case, I'm going to choose my EcoTank 15,000 for an example. And when I click on that and I go to Printer Properties, it will open another dialog box. And this should show some different things in here. For one, you should have a couple extra tabs than you would normally have for just a Windows driver. And on the last one, I have version information, and it says that it is the Epson printing system. Now, a lot of times, I'll go change this to the generic Microsoft driver and show you what it looks like. So a lot of times it will say Microsoft IPP class driver, and you see that a tab went away. And also when I click on this settings, it tells me everywhere that it's the Microsoft driver, and this is not the correct driver. You do not want to use this. You want to have it set for your specific model of printer driver. Now, if you do not have the correct drivers installed, you can literally go to Google and just type in your brand, model, and driver for your printer, and it should come right to the top and take you to their page where you can download the driver for your specific operating system and install it without any trouble. And if you see other printer drivers in your system that it has left behind that are not original, so they're using the Microsoft driver, you can go back to this list here, and you can click on that printer and click remove to get rid of it, so that you don't have any extra ones and you do not accidentally print to it. So that's step one. Just make sure you have the correct original brand drivers from the manufacturer installed. Now, the next thing we'll talk about is actually printing and some of the settings that you're going to want to use. I have another video on my channel where I show how to use this Faststone image viewer. This is so far the best image viewer and printing utility that I have discovered for Windows. It gives you really easy access. So I'll put the thumbnail to that video on the screen right here so you can go watch it if you haven't already, because that is this is a very important piece to making your life a lot easier when it comes to printing and being able to get to your individual printer settings with each print job. So with this image selected, I'm going to right click and click print, or I could hit Control P with that image selected, and you'll see that it opens up a dialog box with that image thumbnail up there at the top. I have my printer selection drop down, my print setup button, and all these other settings. Now, everything down here generally will be set just like you see it on my screen, with 0 margins, original size, and shrink if larger set. Everything else you can kind of leave alone, but generally would be all set just like you see it here. And in this case, again, I'm going to choose my EcoTank 15,000 printer, and when I click the printer setup button, it will open the printer dialog box. And then I can click Properties, and you should see the printer properties for this printer. And
If you do not see this, if this doesn't look like this, you're probably not running the correct drivers. So go back to that first part of the video and watch that on how to find and download and install your correct drivers. So if you don't have the correct drivers installed, you're going to run into more and more problems with this. And there's a couple settings here that I like to point out. One is your paper source. So some printers like this EcoTank 15,000 has a paper tray and a paper cassette. The paper cassette, of course, is where you put the paper in the front, which is the tray you pull out. The paper tray is the rear feed, this has kind of a rear gravity feed system, which is how I typically feed all of my paper, so that because I'm constantly changing it out and everything, it just makes my life a little bit easier. And then the next setting we're going to look at is the paper type. For sublimation paper, you usually want to use presentation paper matte. That seems to be the most compatible. That avoids things like banding, which is when you get those stripes across your page where you can kind of tell that it's been printed with an inkjet printer. So if you're getting those, then most common problem for that is almost always the paper type selection. A lot of people say clean your print heads and different things, but in most cases when you have banding, now I'm not talking about little white lines where ink is missing, but usually ink is overlapping, causing dark lines, and that's almost always the paper type selection. And the print quality we want to set to high, and of course it's on color. Unless I'm printing something that's in totally black and white. In that case, if I'm doing that, I'll usually choose black or grayscale. Sometimes with sublimation, it will come out kind of brownish looking if you don't do that, and you're really just printing something that's black and white or grayscale. And then on the More Options tab, the common setting to use, of course, is the mirror image. This was a totally non-mirrored graphic that I print, so I would choose mirror image for sublimation for that to print. And now that I've shown you those settings, we're going to show you how to save those, because over here on the left you see some printing presets, and I have one called Sublimation 8.5 by 11 Mirrored. And when I change these, you'll notice these settings over here change when I click on different presets. So if I click that one, that sets everything for me for this particular type of paper and the settings that I want with it mirrored. And for example, if I want to create another one that's not mirrored, then I would uncheck that. You set everything first and then click your add and remove presets, and we'll call this one Sublimation 8.5 by 11 not mirrored. And you can assign a different icon to it if you'd like, and we click save and close, and now you'll see that I have two presets here. One's mirrored, one's not mirrored. So if I'm selected on this one, mirrored is selected. If I go back and I select this one, mirrored is not selected. So setting these presets will make your life a lot easier when it comes to quickly selecting how you want to print something. And we'll click OK and get out of all of that. And then we would simply click print, and if everything goes right, the item will print. However, when you load your printer with paper, one of the things you have to do is you have to tell it what kind of paper it is. So the two must match in order for it to print. If you have your printer set on plain paper and you choose presentation paper matte or vice versa in your printer dialog, it will prompt you on the front of the printer as to what you want to do, whether you want to change the printer setting or print with existing settings. So the two have to match in order for it to print correctly.
All right, well, hopefully those things clear up some things about printing and paper types and all that fun stuff that we all have to deal with and sometimes find confusing. So if you have any questions or comments, post them down below the video. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone for the love, kindness, and support that you've provided to Tammy and I over the past several years. It's been almost 10 years, believe it or not, been 8.5 years since we bought our first Cricut, so we're almost a decade into new careers for both of us. So when you buy great products like Orcal 651, Thermoflex heat transfer vinyl, DPI sub, premium sublimation ink, blanks, any of those things that you buy from our site help support us and our employees and our employees' families. Don't forget about our subscription and membership, which gives you access to our e-learning courses and also significant discounts on product purchases as well. So if you like our videos and everything we do, click the subscribe button down below if you haven't already. And when you do, click the bell next to it so that you'll get notified when I publish new videos. And then in the video description, there's also links to all of our Facebook groups, our Facebook pages. So joining those groups, liking our pages, leaving us reviews helps us out immensely. And we thoroughly enjoy every minute of this journey along this path with you to bring love, kindness, and hope to the world using your crafting hobby or small business, whether it's been in person, on the phone, or through social media.